This is the story when Buddha sent a man's father to heaven. In ancient India, there was a tradition surrounding the passing of parents or grandparents, with various rituals and beliefs about ensuring their journey to heaven. Once, a man's father passed away, and he was determined to secure his father's place in heaven. In his town, there were many who claimed to arrange tickets to heaven, but none could guarantee a confirmed spot. Desperate, the man heard that Gautama Buddha was visiting the area. Believing an enlightened being like Buddha could ensure direct passage to heaven, he sought him out. Finding Buddha seated under a tree by a large lake, the man approached and pleaded earnestly, grasping Buddha's feet and making his request. Before Buddha could respond, the man invoked a local custom that insists one cannot refuse a sincere request. Buddha, respecting this tradition, instructed the man to perform a series of tasks to determine his father's fate. First, he was told to return home, fetch an earthen pot, fill it half with rocks and half with butter, and bring it back. The man, eager to ensure success, obtained the largest pot he could find, filled it as instructed, and carried it back to Buddha with great effort. Buddha then instructed him to circumambulate the lake 3 times with the heavy pot. Exhausted but determined, the man complied. Upon completing the task, Buddha directed him to wade into the lake until the water reached his chest and then gently release the pot. Next, Buddha challenged the man to break the pot underwater with a single stroke using a stick he provided. This task proved daunting, but the man summoned all his strength and struck the pot as instructed. When the pot broke, contrary to Buddha's prediction, the butter floated while the stones sank. Disheartened by the outcome, the man questioned Buddha about the apparent deception regarding natural laws. Buddha calmly responded, explaining that the outcome reflected the nature of the man's father. If he was like butter, pure and light, he would ascend to heaven. If like a stone, heavy with attachments, he would not. Realizing the deeper lesson in his failed attempt, the man left with a new understanding and a sense of peace, guided by Buddha's wisdom to accept the natural course of his father's journey. This is the story when a mother asks Buddha to revive her dead son. A woman who had lost her husband and 2 of her 3 sons was devastated when her last remaining child also passed away. Overwhelmed with grief, she took her son's lifeless body to Gautama the Buddha, demanding that he prove his teachings by bringing the boy back to life. Understanding her intense emotional state, Gautama calmly responded, "I will bring your boy back to life. Go and get me a few sesame seeds from a house that has never known death." Holding onto her son's body, the woman went from house to house in search of such seeds, but she soon realized that every home in the town had experienced death in some form. There was no household untouched by loss. Realizing the futility of her quest, she returned to Gautama, having completed the solemn rites for her son's body. Despite her profound loss, she chose to stay by Gautama's side for the rest of her life, finding solace in his teachings and wisdom. This story is called "Does God Exist?" A remarkable incident occurred in the life of Gautama the Buddha. One morning, during a gathering of his disciples, a devout follower of Rama approached him. Throughout his life, he had devoted himself to chanting Rama, 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 not only visiting temples, but also constructing many himself. As age caught up with him, a slight doubt crept in. He thought, "I have spent my entire life uttering the name of God, but there are so many who do not believe in God and yet enjoy life. What if there is no God, as some suggest? Have I wasted my life?" Though he believed in God, a lingering doubt remained. Deciding to seek clarity from an enlightened being, he approached Gautama. Before sunrise, he stood in the shadows and asked, "Is there God?" Gautama looked at him and replied unequivocally, "No." This was the first time he had stated such a clear denial. For the disciples present, who had grappled with the question of God's existence, this definitive answer brought immense relief. The struggle seemed over. There was no God watching over them, allowing them the freedom to live as they wished. It was a moment of profound liberation. Later that evening, another man arrived, a Charvaka, a staunch materialist who denied anything beyond what was tangible. During that era, Charvakas were known for their expertise in challenging belief in God. This particular man had spent his life disproving God's existence to many. However, as old age approached, a small doubt crept into his mind. What if there is indeed a God? After spending a lifetime refuting his existence, will he punish me? Believers say God is vengeful. Could it be true? Despite his certainty that God did not exist, this doubt nagged at him. After sunset, he approached Gautama, standing in the shadows, and asked the same question, "Is there God?" This time, Gautama looked at him and responded, "Yes." This created turmoil among the disciples. In the morning, they had rejoiced at the affirmation that there was no God. Now, in the evening, Gautama affirmed the existence of God. They wondered about Gautama's intentions. Was he trying to confuse them? However, Gautama's purpose was clear: to strip away all beliefs so that genuine inquiry and search could begin. Belief, he taught, often hindered true understanding and exploration. This story is called The Story of Buddha and Ananda. Ananda was actually Gautama's cousin brother. When Gautama began initiating people into monkhood, Ananda approached him and said, "I wish to become a monk, but on one condition: I will always be by your side. You must never send me away on any errand." Gautama smiled and replied, "It's up to you. If you impose conditions on discipleship, you may never truly experience it." Despite Ananda's condition, Gautama accepted it without objection. On another occasion, Gautama decided to visit his wife Yashoda after 8 years of separation. He instructed Ananda to stay behind, knowing Yashoda's feelings about his sudden departure years ago. Ananda agreed reluctantly. When they met, Yashoda expressed her anger and disappointment fiercely, accusing Gautama of abandonment and cowardice. Gautama listened patiently and then explained that the man she had married was gone, replaced by a realized being who sought a greater purpose. Despite her objections, Gautama remained composed. Yashoda then challenged Gautama to provide for their son's future. Gautama called for his begging bowl and gave it to his son, declaring that he renounced his royal legacy so his son could live freely. His son accepted the bowl and became a monk. Ananda's insistence on his condition limited his understanding and experience. When Gautama was on his deathbed, only enlightened disciples were allowed near him. Ananda, though close, remained outside. Distraught, he questioned why he was excluded. Gautama explained that true understanding requires openness and absence of conditions. Ananda's story serves as a cautionary tale about the limitations imposed by setting conditions in life, hindering one's spiritual growth and understanding. The next story is about Buddha and Angulimala. Once, there lived a man known as Angulimala. Feeling deeply wronged by society, he became consumed by anger. In his youth, he believed life was unfair, and in retaliation, he vowed to kill 101 people, each time taking a finger to wear around his neck as a grisly rosary. Living in a jungle on a thoroughfare to other places, Angulimala instilled fear in all who passed. Over the years, he fulfilled his gruesome vow, needing just one more life to complete it. Then, Gautama Buddha arrived in the town. Warned of the danger, people urged Buddha not to pass that way, fearing for his life. Undeterred, Buddha insisted that denying Angulimala would leave his quest unfulfilled. As Buddha approached, Angulimala, seated on a rock, roared to intimidate him, but Buddha continued calmly with a smile. Intrigued and angered by Buddha's serenity, Angulimala confronted him, demanding to know who he was. Showing his garland of fingers, Angulimala challenged Buddha, who replied peacefully, acknowledging his reputation but walking on. Angulimala tried to provoke Buddha, questioning his movements and intentions. Buddha clarified, "I have arrived long ago. It is you who seek fulfillment." Angulimala, puzzled, laughed at Buddha's assertion. Buddha explained that while Angulimala sought fulfillment through violence, he had found fulfillment within himself. Realizing the futility of killing someone unafraid of death, Angulimala sought guidance from Buddha, who accepted him as a disciple. Buddha instructed Angulimala to return to the town he had terrorized, now as a monk, to seek alms and spread Buddha's teachings. Initially, the townspeople, having lost loved ones to Angulimala, reacted with fear and hostility, throwing stones at him. Bleeding from the onslaught, Angulimala endured, demonstrating his transformation. Buddha intervened, urging the townspeople to recognize Angulimala's change and cease their violence. Accepted as a disciple, Angulimala traveled widely, teaching Buddha's wisdom. Though forever known as Angulimala for the fingers he once wore, he became a revered figure, embodying the transformative power of Buddha's teachings. The next story is about Buddha and the astrologer. One day, after attaining enlightenment, Gautama Buddha sat beneath a tree, not because it was the ideal spot, but because in those times, trees provided the only shade amidst sparse surroundings. Buildings were few, and a tree offered respite from the harsh sun. An adept astrologer bathing in the river noticed a footprint on the bank. Skilled in reading such signs, he deduced it belonged to an emperor, a ruler destined to govern the world. Intrigued, he followed the tracks, expecting to encounter royalty deep in the jungle. To his surprise, he found Gautama, a monk, peacefully seated under a tree. Confounded, the astrologer approached Gautama and asked, "Who are you?" Gautama replied humbly, "I am nobody, just a simple monk." Perplexed by Gautama's majestic footprint, the astrologer remarked, "With feet like yours, you should be a world conqueror." Gautama responded calmly, "Indeed, I will conquer, but not through conquest. There are two ways to possess the world, through conquest or inclusion," Gautama explained. Conquest brings burdens, while inclusion enriches life. When the astrologer questioned Gautama's ownership as a monk who possesses nothing, Gautama clarified, "I own nothing and am nobody. Therefore, everything is mine." Gautama elucidated that being no thing does not signify uselessness but encompasses inclusivity. If one is something, they are confined. Being no thing allows for boundless potential. The astrologer, intrigued yet skeptical, sat down, questioning Gautama's paradoxical assertion. Gautama invited the astrologer, saying, "You predict life because you lack a plan. Join me, and together we will forge a new path beyond predictions." The next story is how Buddha started Zen. One particular day, Gautama Buddha ascended the dais where hundreds of disciples eagerly awaited his teachings. Among them was Mahakashyap, known to the community as a simple man who spent his days quietly sitting under a tree, seemingly disinterested in Buddha's discourses or meditation. Many considered him a fool beyond teaching or spiritual understanding. On this day, Gautama held a flower in his hand, and instead of speaking, he gazed at it intently. Time passed without a word from him, minutes stretching into hours while everyone waited expectantly. Then, unexpectedly, Mahakashyap burst into laughter, his laughter echoing through the silence. Gautama turned to him and the gathered crowd and said, "What I could convey through words, I have already shared with you. What cannot be conveyed through words, Mahakashyap has received." This moment marked the genesis of Zen. Unlike other spiritual paths with their sciences, teachings, scriptures, methods, and practices, Zen defied conventions. It was a path without constraints, requiring only the readiness of someone like Mahakashyap, a person with profound perceptiveness, to make it happen. This exchange between Buddha and Mahakashyap stands as the first recorded instance of Zen in history. While similar moments may have occurred before, this event crystallized into a spiritual path that transcended traditional teachings and methodologies. The next story is about why Buddha sent a monk to a prostitute. Gautama Buddha and his disciples, numbering between 2,000 to 3,000 monks, would travel extensively from village to village across India. Their practice involved begging for food, a cultural norm where spiritual seekers were prioritized even over one's own family. To alleviate burden on the villagers, Gautama imposed a rule that they should not stay in any place for more than 3 days, except during the monsoons when travel through jungles was perilous. During one such monsoon stay in a larger town, Ananda Tirtha, a tall and handsome monk, encountered a courtesan while begging for alms. She generously offered him shelter, but Ananda insisted on seeking Gautama's approval first. Mockingly, she challenged him to ask his guru. Returning with his alms, Ananda sought Gautama's permission to stay at her house. Gautama sanctioned it, emphasizing that if she invited him, he should accept. This decision stirred controversy among the townspeople, who objected vehemently to a monk lodging at a prostitute's home, fearing corruption of the spiritual path. Gautama countered their objections, asking why they worried when the courtesan herself had extended the invitation. He asserted that true seekers should embrace higher paths if found, not shy away from them. Despite the uproar, Ananda stayed at her home during the cold and rainy season. She provided him with warm clothing and cooked nourishing meals. In the evenings, she entertained him with music and dance, which further fueled gossip among the people that Ananda was straying from his spiritual path. When the rain ceased and it was time to depart, Ananda arrived at Gautama's side accompanied by the courtesan, now dressed as a female monk. This incident highlighted the power of truth in guiding one's actions and choices on the spiritual journey. The next story is about when Buddha says, "Drop it." One day, a man approached Gautama Buddha carrying 2 handfuls of flowers, a customary gesture of respect in Indian culture when greeting a guru. Gautama, sitting alone in a small enclosure, looked at him and said, "Drop it." Confused, The man thought Gautama meant he should drop the flowers, perhaps due to their inauspicious placement in his left hand. Following custom, he dropped the flowers in his left hand and proceeded cautiously. Gautama looked at him again and repeated, "Drop it." Perplexed, the man then dropped the rest of the flowers. Gautama clarified, "I said drop it, not the flowers." He explained that the man needed to drop his identity as the one who brings offerings. Without this inner dropping, he would miss the essence of being with an enlightened one. Simply bowing down, listening, and leaving would not suffice to grasp the profound potential in Gautama's presence. To truly transform one's life, one must drop this conceptual self composed of thoughts, emotions, opinions, and beliefs. Holding on to these constructs impedes new possibilities from emerging. Merely decorating old habits with new additions achieves nothing. Real change requires a methodical process to facilitate genuine inner release. This is the story of Buddha's death. Buddha passed away due to poisoning from food he consumed. After realizing he had been poisoned and could not recover, he instructed his host not to serve the meal to his disciples, emphasizing that he had already eaten and appreciated the hospitality. As his health declined, unable to sit up or speak, he gathered his disciples to impart final guidance on continuing their path without him, unexpectedly facing his end earlier than anticipated. He remained lying down, supporting his head, which became the pose known as Gautama's Mahaparinirvana, revered by Buddhists. This pose and the last teachings he imparted became deeply significant in Buddhist culture, inspiring many followers to depict Buddha in this reclining posture. It's understood in Buddhist tradition that while one can emulate the pose, true enlightenment and becoming a Buddha cannot be simply imitated.